Well, stung by a backlash over its new privacy policy, Google this afternoon tried to dispel fears the search company will be collecting more data from its users than before. The company claims web surfers can simply turn off Google's linked services. But privacy watchdogs are growing increasingly wary of potential violations of users' information. Today, Ontario's Information and Privacy Commissioner chaired a conference in Toronto to draw attention to a proposed bill that could grant the federal government sweeping powers for online surveillance. Anne Kavukian joins us now. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about what this whole, it's being called surveillance by design. First of all, kind of just explain what that would be.
That was a term that I applied to the situation, and it's prefaced by beware of surveillance by design. Because what the federal government is proposing, if the bill that it introduces in February resembles the previous bills, its predecessors, is that the telcos and ISPs would have to configure their systems to enable law enforcement to have backdoor access, automatic access without a warrant or judicial authorization. It's like behind the scene, they could get access to whoever's information they wanted in terms of subscriber data, IP address, your mobile device identifiers. There's a lot of data that when you string it together, you put the dots together, and you will get a very detailed personal profile of where I've been looking at, what websites, what my interests are, what my activities are.
There's obviously a broad libertarian principle when you speak of privacy where the government and anyone else should not get into my personal affairs. But what I'd like to know about the proposed changes is what specifically should I be concerned about as a consumer that could actually happen to me as a result of the misuse of this information?
What you should be concerned about is about your freedom. We live, I think last time I looked, in a free and democratic society where the government and law enforcement, they don't get to look at whatever they want about your life. That's not how it works. They're supposed to ask for limited things, like for taxation purposes and other things. If you don't break the law, you're an innocent, law-abiding citizen, you get to live your life freely without the state surveying your activities.
But as a pragmatic matter, are you actually concerned that the use of this information would quickly become the abuse of that kind of information?
It's unexpected consequences. It seems, there's that whole thing of, well, if you have nothing to hide, what's the big deal? The big deal is taken out of context. Information can take on a very different flavor. And you don't know when something might arise that can suggest that you have a particular activity that actually isn't the case. We've seen this so many times where out of context, information paints a very dark picture about you, and often it's inaccurate, and then you have to undo all that. This is just a solution looking for a problem. There isn't a problem. Right now, as it stands, the police seek out warrants from the judge gives them a warrant, and they can do their business. There's no problem here that requires this kind of intensive surveillance to expand on a bit-by-bit basis behind the scenes. You won't know who's looking at what. And that's not freedom.
Just shift this discussion a little bit here to the telcos and the internet service providers, the implications for them as well in the way that they're going to have to do business here.
Well, that's right. And this is going to cost them dearly. I mean, no one's talking about what they are going to have to do to reconfigure their systems. The smaller telcos especially, what are they, about 15% of that? I don't know if it's that high. But they are very concerned with the cost implications. The larger ones, of course, will go along with it. Everyone will have to do this. But imagine that for the smaller ones, if they need some assistance, the government's saying, well, we might be able to help you out. Are you kidding? You're going to use taxpayer dollars to help companies spy on us, essentially. Why are we doing this? You don't need to do this. There is no compelling need here, zero. But the negative consequence is that they will be encroaching upon our privacy. Privacy is not about secrecy. It's not about, well, if you have nothing to hide, what do you have to fear? It's not about that. Privacy is about control, the individual being in control of who has access to their information. And this is what we have to preserve, that freedom of choice. It's our information. It's not the government's information. And if you haven't broken the law, it shouldn't be the police's information.
Now, of course, the enforcement of any regulation is always easier if you carry a big stick. And what I wonder is, the world is flat. The Internet is a very big place. What can we actually do, A, to detect, and then B, to prevent or deal with the misuse of information if the providers don't go along with whatever rules there are in place?
The way I look at this is there is not a problem here that will be remedied by giving this kind of surveillance power, backdoor access to law enforcement and compelling telcos and ISPs to configure their systems to correspond with it. There is not a problem here. In fact, it might exacerbate the law enforcement problem because there will be a massive additional amount of information they'll have access to. The whole needle in the haystack thing. What you need are good analytic tools. There are many things that law enforcement needs. And let me be clear, I'm not anti-law enforcement. Not at all. But there has to be a reason why law enforcement is accessing your information, your personal information. See, in this free society that we thus far live in, you can do whatever you want. You can surf whatever sites you want. You can buy things. You can engage in whatever activities you want, as long as they don't break the law. You're not breaking the law. You're minding your own business. The government should mind its own business and stay out of yours.
I don't even know if I should ask this, but hey, what about in the name of greater security, that argument that has always been raised to try and access information that might not generally be required?
It's a myth that somehow giving up your privacy is going to give you greater security. It's nonsense, but it sounds really good. So there's this zero-sum model that everyone applies. The more security you have, by necessity, the less privacy you can have. It's nonsense. We have worked with many, many organizations to develop what we call positive-sum solutions, both privacy and biometrics, facial recognition and privacy and RFIDs, privacy and CCTV cameras. You can do both. It's not that somehow if you forfeit your privacy, you're miraculously going to get more security. You'll get less of both. And we don't need to do that. So some of what our work entails is dispelling these myths that, oh, you're going to have lots of public safety and greater security if you just forfeit that privacy thing. It's nonsense. You'll have less of both, but you will have less freedom. That's what this is all about. And if you're a smart business, you'll gain a significant competitive advantage by protecting your customers' privacy because they are losing confidence and trust in businesses and what they're doing there with their information.
Always interesting. A great conversation to have when you're in. Thanks very much, Anne.
My pleasure. Thank you.